Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my epic rant on the 2023 horror film Skinamarink. Now, before I go any further sharing my thoughts on this terrible, tedious, awful film, I want to give a special shout out to two different people. Uh, my good friend Matt, Ramble for Life, and John for requesting this video. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, Skinamarink is a film that has been getting a fair amount of buzz, came out in January in a limited theatrical run. It had some screenings at like some film festivals in 2022, but it didn't really have a wide release until 2023. It just recently was available to stream on AMC Plus or Shudder, and it's been getting rave reviews. People saying it's the next Blair Witch Project. People talking about how it's terrifying, how it's full of unbearable, unrelenting tension and fear, and how it's the new face of horror, and it's revolutionary, and it's going to change the way horror is and will be for many, many years to come. And I don't get it. I really don't understand why this film has not only gotten positive reviews, or at least as many positive reviews as it's got, but a slew of just glowing reviews where people gush about this movie and talk about how phenomenal it is and how the director is some kind of new horror visionary. And I'm like, did these critics watch the same movie that I did? Because I don't fucking see it. I mean, it's I mean, it's not like I could see anything to begin with because most of the movie is just grainy footage of fucking nothing. A wall, the floor, some Legos, a door, uh, um, a Barbie doll, a Fisher Price phone, and all of this stuff is like, okay, is there actually more to this? Is there going to be some semblance of a plot? Is there going to be a narrative? Is anything going to fucking happen? No. You're just going to have some weird, vague face in a corner of a room tell you to go to sleep. And then the end credits roll. You're like, what the fuck was that? Seriously, I don't get the praise this film gets at all. I understand it. I got it when it comes to some of the A24 films, even though I wasn't as big of a fan of Midsommar or Hereditary. I understood why people like those films, or they saw some themes and some subtext in them. Where the fuck is the subtext here? Where is it clearly detailed to you? Where is anything other than grainy shots of walls and doors in the middle of the fucking night, or cartoons on a TV, on a CRT TV? Like, it's one of those things that's like, okay, where is all this subtext? Where is any of this? Because I'm sorry, I don't fucking see it. And if you have to make it up, and if the answer for all of this is that you have to do it, you have to insert your interpretation of the subtext, and you're the one that has to do all of this work, then it's a bad film. It's a bad movie with a beyond bad screenplay. But this film is getting pass after pass after pass from numerous different publications, numerous different critics. There are like multiple different YouTube videos from YouTubers like Wendy Goon and Mr. Gigi that are praising the movie and doing breakdowns of it and talking about how it's one of the most terrifying, unrelenting, grueling horror films they've seen in years, and how it taps into this childhood trauma and fear of the dark and abandonment and all this other stuff. And I'm like, how did you feel anything watching this fucking movie? Because there's no reason to feel or care, because there's no plot, there's no narrative, there's no character development. You don't even see these kids' faces. There's nothing to connect with. I mean, am I living in idiocracy right now? Because that's what it feels like. What's the sequel going to be? Skinamarink 2? Dick balls? And then most of the film is just going to be shots of some guy's dick and balls with grainy photography from Dutch angles and different low shots. And it's shot at night. And you'll get people whispering about the girth and the size of the dick or the balls, and then the end of the movie will just be some disembodied voice saying, "Don't come," or "Come now, please." Like, I don't fucking get it. I don't understand. There's nothing there. And I see like 50 different fucking interpretations of this movie. And the reason for that is because people are just making shit up. Because that's the only way that they can really make sense of anything. This isn't a film. This is a bullshit excuse for an art project that is masquerading as a feature film. This should have been put into an art installation at an art gallery titled 572 Days, and the artist should be talking about how it's an experiment in childhood trauma, and then you would have all these people look at the video and be like, "Oh, yeah, I get it. I totally understand." And then they would just pull all this shit out of their ass about the meaning of the Legos on the wall and the Barbie doll and all this other stuff, when it's just a bunch of B-roll that's just spliced together for an hour and 40 minutes. Seriously, this is as much of a film as the little short videos that you created for your college film class to show that you understood filming techniques. Like, if you took a bunch of those that you did for your class and then edited them together into an hour and 40 minutes, that's this movie. Because there's no plot, there's no character development, and there's nothing. There's nothing to this fucking thing except boredom. So I know I'm like 8 minutes in and I still haven't necessarily started talking about the movie, but this is one of those films where it's just going to take me however long it's going to take me to unpack all my feelings and all my frustrations with this fucking thing. Because I don't even want to call it a film, it's a thing. It's directed by Kyle Edward Ball, who also wrote the film. And he sucks balls. I know that's a low-hanging fruit, but when it comes to this movie, it fits. I mean, the direction in this film is nothing impressive. There's nothing about this film visually and from a directing standpoint that is anything incredible or anything visionary. This is nothing new. This is the type of shit that literally anybody could do with their phone late at night with the lights off, shooting a dark room and a few things around their bedroom. Anyone who is watching this video right now, if they have a camera, they could create something that is pretty much on par with what is in this movie visually from a directing standpoint. Just throw in some Dutch angles, throw in some low angle shots, shoot a bunch of blurry walls, do some stuff in post production where you make the doors disappear or the toilet disappear, glue some Legos on the ceiling. This is all shit that anybody could fucking do. This is nothing impressive. The fact that I see so many videos and so many write-ups where people are talking about how this is an unbelievable feat of filmmaking just astonishes me. There's nothing unbelievable about this fucking filmmaking. I have seen short films that are on par with anything in this movie that were showcased in film class in college. And none of that shit ever wound up in theaters, or none of their work ever got praised out the ass for good reason. Because there's nothing much to it. It's nothing impressive. It's nothing praiseworthy. It's rudimentary. It's rudimentary filmmaking. So yeah, this direction sucks balls because there's nothing impressive, really that unique, or really that interesting about it, because it's just a bunch of nonsense. Shots of walls, ceilings, floors, nightlights, derpy Fisher Price phones. And then the writing? What writing? The bare minimum of writing. I mean, all the guy did before this was make experimental short YouTube videos that were supposedly based on real nightmares that he heard people tell him about. And it shows. This is the kind of product that you get from a filmmaker who is nowhere near the level of a David Lynch or even Michael Bay, who knows their limitations and is like, okay, I can't write worth a shit, and my direction is very, very limited in terms of what I'm capable of doing with the camera and so on. So I I'm just gonna do a movie that's just an extended short film with no plot and no character development because I understand my limitations. Or it's one of those things where the director is so full of themselves, where they think that they're some kind of master visionary and artist, that they can write a movie like Skinamarink, have no character development and no narrative, and have all these different shots of blank walls with grainy filters over them, and throw in a bunch of lo-fi aesthetics in terms of the sound effects and sound design, have some kid do some bad ADR dubbing over multiple scenes and whisper, "We should be quiet. We should be... Mommy, daddy, mama." And then have just off-kilter shots of like a cereal bowl and this other nonsense, and edit it all together, and then marketed it as an experiment in childhood trauma, and watch the money flow in, watch the praise come down the pike from all these different publications and all these different people, and just pretty much let the audience do the work for you, because you deliberately make a film that's so vague that there's nothing you can really pin it down with. You can't really make a whole lot of sense out of anything. You can't really necessarily pinpoint the where it's trying to tell you about a certain theme or a certain amount of subtext. So you just allow the viewer to do all the work. You allow the person who watches the movie to interpret it for you. It's the laziest type of filmmaking imaginable, where under the guise of leaving it up to interpretation, you do fucking nothing. That's really what Skinamarink is to me. It's the laziest kind of filmmaking or writing, because there isn't much when it comes to the visuals, and when it comes to the script and the narrative, it's as vague as the blurry face at the end of the movie that tells you to go to sleep. So yeah, there's something about these kids and their parents and what's going on with their home life, and the father goes away and it's late at night, and these kids are trapped in their house, and they're stuck in a waking nightmare where they're looking around the house and different nooks and crannies and different angles and different perspectives, and this weird stuff is happening. The window disappears, or door disappears, the toilet disappears at one point. They are just experiencing a lot of these just random occurrences that I guess are supposed to be scary, when it's a complete and total opposite for me. I'm sorry, the Fisher Price phone is not scary. It looks like something out of a Pee-wee's Playhouse episode. I'm not scared. And a Barbie doll? Oh my god, Barbie, I'm shaking. The Legos on the ceiling? Wow. Some of the scariest shit I've ever seen in my life. A chair is on the ceiling? Wow, I've never seen that before in a horror film. So yeah, these two kids, there's something going on in this house. They're hearing this disembodied voice that's saying just typical spooky, just scary dialogue that you've heard a million times. And there's something that happens with their mother, who becomes, it seems like she might be possessed, or she's not responsive, or and I guess you're supposed to make some sense out of this, out of all of this, when there's nothing there. There's nothing there to make sense of. And the kids get trapped, or they get killed. There's blood on the rug or whatever on the ceiling. I don't really give a shit. I didn't really give a shit at that point, and I still don't give a shit. I don't care whether I interpreted it wrong, because this film gives me no reason to give a shit. It gives me no reason to really care whether I interpret it correctly or not. And I guess it's supposed to tap into some kind of childhood trauma and fear of the dark. And I'm like, how does it do that? How, and for those of you that are big fans of this movie and it works for you, how does it do this? How does what's presented with this movie, with the finished product, how does it tap into that fear for you? How does it make you care? How does it make you get invested in what's happening and feel like it's actually happening to you? Because for me, it does nothing. It just bores me out of my goddamn skull, because there's no plot and there's no character development and there's no reason to care about anything. This would have been hard to watch even if it was a 10 to 20 minute long short, because there's nothing to this film. There's nothing to it narratively. And before anyone says, like, oh, you just didn't get it, once again, what is there to get? What is there to get when it comes to this script and whatever sparse narrative there is? There's some kids, they get trapped in their house, it's a nightmare, strange things are happening, and they feel trapped and alone, and they don't escape. Okay, what is there? They say some things about, can we watch something happy? Okay. All right. What is there to make out of that? What is there to make out of any of it? Like, if you have to do mental gymnastics to the point where it's an entire Olympic game, then you're just grasping at straws and you're pulling shit out of thin air. So what is there? What is there that's so deep and so complex about Skinamarink? If you can explain it, if you can bring it up, please feel free to do so. And I've seen a lot of these videos, and I've seen Wendy Goon's video, I've seen this other stuff, and I think it's just a bunch of bullshit. I still feel that way, because what is there doesn't really tie into any of that stuff. It only ties into what's in your head. And I guess maybe that's what the film is trying to do. Like the director and the writer and the editor said, It's an experiment in childhood trauma. So maybe if you had these sort of traumatic childhood experiences, then maybe it triggers something in your brain. And that's what makes it something that sticks with you and gives you this anxiety and gives you this dread. But if you never really had that kind of experience, then it's nothing. There's no connection to anything. There's no feeling. There's no emotion. There's nothing except sheer boredom and apathy. Because you don't give a fuck. So once again, if it's so deep, if it's so thought-provoking, how and why? Based on what's on the screen. Not what's in your head and what is left up to interpretation. What is on the screen? And I know some of you will also be like, oh, well, you don't like slow burn horror movies. Bullshit. I don't like bad horror films. I don't like bad films, period, like Skinamarink. I can deal with slow burn horror. The Exorcist, in a lot of ways, is a slow burn horror film. It takes quite a long time until Reagan gets fully possessed and starts masturbating with the crucifix and all of that stuff, with the head spinning around, the puking, and so on. You have that one scene with the spinal tap that's pretty unsettling, and some stuff leading up to that, but a lot of it's very much rooted in character development and building things up. So The Exorcist is a great example of a slow burn horror film that I love. The Changeling is another one of those. The Changeling is one of my all-time favorite films, period, and one of my personal favorite haunted house films. And that movie is the epitome of a slow burn. It starts off and it just kind of lulls you into this sort of false sense of security, and then it hammers you with a certain revelation, but then it just continues to slowly unravel this mystery throughout the movie. And it's never boring. It never loses any of its impact, any of its power. It just gets increasingly more interesting and genuinely more frightening. This just gets increasingly more boring and increasingly more tedious, and it just pisses you off more and more and more and more as each frame unfolds because of how pointless it is. Because of the fact that there is no plot and there is no characterization. What, where, how, in what way is this a slow burn horror film to begin with? There's no fire that is ever lit in the fucking first place. How can you have a slow burn horror movie if there's no fire? There's not even smoke. You know this? Oh, where there's smoke, there's fire. With Skinamarink, there's not even smoke. There's nothing. Because that's all this film is fucking nothing. So how the hell can this be a slow burn horror film when there is no fire that's ever lit in the first place? Like I said, it's a bullshit art project. If it was something like that, then okay, I could judge it on that merit. But it's a film. It's a movie. And I'm sorry, movies should have at the bare minimum a narrative and some character development. And I've seen people say, oh, well, the fact that it doesn't have a plot, it helps it so it's not bogged down by character development and a narrative. I'm like, what? So nowadays, people are saying that a narrative and character development are a bad thing? God help us all. I mean, the future of cinema is fucked. If that's the case. Oh, it's not bogged down by a plot and characters. Give me a fucking break. It's bogged down to the point where it's an actual bog because it doesn't have a plot or characters. This movie feels like 572 days when you're watching it. Because it's that boring and that tedious and that pointless of an experience. I'm hearing all kinds of excuses about this movie, all kinds of defenses and shit, and ways that you have to watch this film. I've never seen this before. I've never seen a film that has gotten so many people just putting so many different rules on it and so many different ways that you have to watch the movie in order to appreciate it. Like, if you have to do all this stuff, if I have to do all these extra steps, like get up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and put the movie on and wear headphones and get a Ouija board and smoke shrooms in order for it to be a worthwhile experience, then it's not a worthwhile experience, let alone a good fucking movie, if I have to do all this extra shit in order to make it good. So, yeah, I mean, it's an epic rant because this is easily one of the worst things I've ever seen. This is one of the worst horror films ever. I mean, I would rather watch Creepshow 3, Cannibal Terror, Cannibal Holocaust, uh, Alien Dead, Alien 2 on Earth, any other horror film that I didn't care for, Halloween Ends, Scream 5, anything other than maybe the August Underground films due to their subject matter over Skinamarink. Because at least those films, as bad as they have a plot. They have characters. This has nothing. It's a waste of your fucking time. And it's crazy to me that anyone can get immersed in this. There's no reason to have this immersion. Oh, it reminded me of when I was a kid and I went to go get a juice box in the middle of the night and I was scared by shadows. Okay, why did it remind you of that? And why was that something that was so immersive for you? And I've seen people say stuff like, "Oh, it's also a allegory to abuse, the childhood abuse." And I'm like, where is that? Where are you getting any of this? Seriously, where is anybody getting any of this? Like I said, you have 50 different interpretations of this movie, and I'm like, okay, one or two things that are left up to interpretation is one thing, but like 50? This is just people inserting their own trauma and their own psyche and their own experiences onto this movie. It's not actually anything that's actually on the screen. Just what's on the screen is nothing. Nothing. Yeah, the next horror icon is going to be a shot of a grainy, blurry wall in the middle of the night. Great. This is what the future of horror cinema should be. Please, God, no. Like, if this is the future of horror as a genre of film, then the horror genre is a dead fuck. If this is what the future has in store for this genre. Unbelievable. Like, what a piece of shit. Just give me a plot. Give me some sort of reason to care. Give me characters. Anything. I mean, even as like an attempt to be scary, it fails. Because most of the time it's just boring. And then every now and then you'll have like a loud noise that I guess is supposed to unsettle you and make you feel uncomfortable and startle you. But all it did was annoy me. So I'm like, okay, I'm already bored. There's no plot. There's no characters. This is insufferable. Now you're just making my ears bleed with loud noises. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, what can I say about anything else about this movie? The cinematography, can't barely see anything, so there's not much to say about that. The editing by the same guy, I could edit this movie. Anyone watching this video, once again, could also edit this movie. You could write, direct, and edit this film. Any person watching this video can do that. And do it for a hell of a lot less than $15,000. This doesn't even look like it cost anything more than fucking $5. You bought some glue. You bought some super glue, and you used that to glue the Legos to the ceiling. And what can I say about the performances by Lucas Paul and uh, Dali Rose Tetrault and Ross Paul and Jamie Hill? There's not much I could say about any of these actors because it's not like they're given anything to really work with. The kids say a few lines of dialogue and they whisper it, and it's all done in post. But if I was to be honest, these kids suck too. The way that they said the dialogue was laughable and bad. We should be quiet. Um, and it's an hour and 40 minutes, but it feels like I said, 572 fucking days. I don't know how many hours that is, but that's how long this film feels while you're watching it. Because there's no reason to be invested in anything. I just hate films like this that are pretentious, that have nothing at all other than lo-fi aesthetic. Like, on its own, the lo-fi analog aesthetic is kind of creepy in some shots, but that's really something that only works in a very small capacity, and it might have worked better if there was just a bare minimum of a plot and character development. Even just a bare minimum. But this film doesn't even have that. That's how bad it is. I'd rather rake my own asshole with a cheese grater and masturbate with a meat grinder than ever watch this fucking pathetic excuse of a horror film ever again in my entire fucking life. Skinamarink, more like Skinamarinky dicky doo, Skinamarinky dick, I hate you.